Has it been a minute or has it been a minute? My fault. Salutations and all that. Obviously, it's time for a new studio tour.
I plugged the mic in, flipped a couple switches and started rhyming. It wasn't right then, but I kept writing, knowing I had to put the time in to earn my stipend. Do your guy a solid one time, subscribe and like this.
So you know where I want to start. MC to MC, right? Microphones. And I'm going to start with the one that started it. This AKG C1000S that I'm holding right now, I bought for, I want to say $100, maybe $120, give or take $20, $40. It might have been 80, it might have been 120, somewhere in that range. I don't know, 20 some odd years ago, right? And this was my first condenser microphone, my first experience with phantom power, all that, right? And as you can see, I still have it and I still use it. It's a pedigree thing for me, right? I did a mixtape and an album with just this mic. And when I go back and I listen to those recordings now, the vocals don't sound like a problem. So obviously the mic did its thing then, even when I didn't really know much about like compression and EQ and right, sweetening things, right? And so this is essentially, for that reason, my most trusted mic. I know that I could plug this into anything in here, whether it be directly into the interface, with or not, with or without inserts. Because like right now I have it going through just preamp 2 on the Audio Fuse Studio with the insert going to the 2A and the DBX 286S. But y'all are not actually hearing the processing from the 286S because I just took a TRS straight out of the 2A to run into the Roland Aerocaster for this video. So y'all really just hearing that preamp right there and that 2A. I don't know if you can see it. I'll put a clip, B-roll or whatever, and the 2A off the B17 2A. And that's what y'all hearing right now. Normally when I'm recording, I have the 286 set up. Well, we'll go into that. But anyways, as I was saying, this is my most trusted mic. When I know for sure I want me on a record, I go for this. And whether or not I process on the way in is just really just a matter of taste for me. My second go-to mic is the Rode NT1A. And that was my second condenser mic. Now, in between these two mics was about 10 years and a handful of like dynamic mics and little specialty labs and whatnot. But as far as for me getting in the studio to record me rhyming, it went from this, and the very next mic was the Rode NT1A. And since I've had that, it's proven itself more of a workhorse even than the AKG, if I'm honest. I did Expiation, my second studio album, third release, second album, all entirely on the NT1A. You know what I'm saying? Some of Project Alpha, my first studio album, was done on, I think one song was done on a C414 and two songs off that album were done on a C800G. And then the rest of so that leaves 10 more songs that I did on this that stood next to those songs. You see what I'm saying? So I went to the Rode NT1A because I had loaned this to my homeboy. This is obviously before I built my second studio. I say second, but I had a few more. My second good studio. right? I had loaned this mic to my homeboy though, right? And I decided I wanted to do some more stuff and I was rebuilding things. And so I got the NT1A on the low back in 2015 used. And since then, I've done an album with it, several singles on and off. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about the NT1A, I find it kind of ironic, if I'm honest, because out of all the mics I own now, that's the one that if you was to go listen to what the slutty gear nerds say, that's the most trash mic in the world. The Rode NT1A. Everybody try to say, oh no, you should get rid of that garbage and get the NT1. It's much better. I don't like the NT1. It sounds dull and boring. Why would I even want to have that? You know what I'm saying? The NT1A, on the other hand, I have never put that microphone in front of anything and not gotten what I was looking for. Ever. That counts me spitting in front of it, me recording other artists, me sampling random sounds into it through the ASR 10 or through a digital sampler or what. Like, I've never put anything into that mic and gotten out something I didn't like. Not saying it doesn't need some processing. It is a bright mic and you do have to DS. But I mean, try to use a C800G without accounting for its brightness in much the exact same manner. As a matter of fact, having used the C800G and having used the NT1A, they both produce bright, fast, transient pop vocals. Yeah, I said it. Do some. Which brings me to my good mic, if you will, right? The Telefunken TF29. For the price of that mic, I could buy 6 or 7 NT1As, give or take, and probably 15 C1000Ss. And I've done a few singles with the TF29. And so far, I'm pretty sure it's my best mic. For real. Like, it sounds amazing. But I'm not real sure about it, to be honest with you. Like, it's hit and miss with me. Like, sometimes I get in front of it and I like what I'm hearing right away. Sometimes I get in front of it and I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I feel like a vocal need a lot of processing after that mic. Sometimes I got one song where I recorded it. I hated the way it sounded. So much so to the fact that to the point that I just put that whole song on the back burner, put the NT1A back up for the next several months to finish the album I was working on, and then revisited that song like literally several months after I recorded it and hated it, and ended up listening to the vocal and not hating it so much the second go round, different ears, different time or whatever, and going ahead and mixing it and releasing it with not a lot of processing on that vocal. And so for me, my good mic, quote unquote, the one that costs more than $1,000, right? I'm just not sure about just yet. And that, out of all the mics I own, you cannot find a negative sentiment about the Telefunken TF29 or its predecessor, the CU29 Copperhead. You cannot find a negative breath about either of those mics anywhere on the internet that I could find. And I've scoured it before researching when I was buying the mic, and since then trying to like get to know the mic. And don't get me wrong, I don't dislike it, but I don't trust it nowhere near as much as I trust this $100 mic and that $250 mic that I've used consistently over years, and they give me what I'm looking for every single time. As to where that Telefunken, when I got it, I couldn't just plug it into my interface. It's too delicate. It's got an attitude. You got to give it some processing. You got to massage this shit. You know what I'm saying? And B, I couldn't just record with it in any room. You know what I'm saying? It's way too sensitive. You will hear every little bit of like the motherfucker is a diva for real. Now, when you put it in its perfect environment and give it its hot stone massage, and you know what I'm saying, and all pamper it the way it wants to be pampered, it produces a signal that neither of these mics can touch. But I don't always want to go through all that. Sometimes I just want to turn the mic on and spit something. And this mic is probably the one that I've been able to do that with the most, the easiest. I even took this mic on stage and rocked with it live. I got this wireless XLR adapter kit where you plug one end into here, and it got a battery in it to supply phantom power, a rechargeable battery, mind you, and then you plug the other end into the mixer. And I flipped the switch, and I was walking all around this spot on the west side of Cleveland, rocking the stage a couple years ago with this mic live. And so I've done albums with this mic. I've performed live with this mic. I'm talking to y'all right now on this mic. Like, this is my best mic for real. The Rode NT1A is by far my most reliable mic. The one that I know it's going to work the way I know it's going to work when I need it to work, the way I need it to work. You feel me? And then that Telefunken is my wild card for real. It's probably the best mic I own. I won't front, but you know what I'm saying? It's a diva. These are workhorses. That's a diva. You know what I'm saying? And funnily enough, you could find more negative about the C1000S and especially the NT1A than probably anything Telefunken ever even breathed on. You know what I'm saying? But that's the thing about when you have a recording studio that makes records versus do you have like a corporate subsidized content space that makes commercials for expensive gear. You know what I'm saying? Like, these mics work day in and day out. That mic, you gotta read it a bedtime story the night before and wake it up with blueberry pancakes. Otherwise, it's gonna give you attitude all day. You know what I'm saying? Moving along though, because I'm rambling to the other most important part of the studio, the opposite end of the chain, monitoring. While everybody is all caught up on preamps and channel strips and EQs and compressors and all that, and don't get me wrong, I am too. I have to constantly remind myself that none of that shit really means that much for real in the scheme of things. The most important parts in your signal chain, whether it be recording, mixing, or mastering, are the ends of the chain. You know what I'm saying? That's why I started with the microphone and I'm moving right into monitoring speakers. Because if you got a dope ass microphone and a dope ass monitoring setup, you can have for real a whole bunch of bullshit in between, and you'll produce more consistent results than somebody that got the best converters and the best fucking preamps and shit and the dopest Mac computer. Like, I swear, people who act like those things are more important are either trying to sell you something or they're not who they say they are. And they don't really know how this stuff works. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I bought the Adams a while back now as a way to kind of really curb my own gas. You know what I'm saying? Because I knew I wasn't getting the translation I needed to get on the Cali IN5s, as great as they are for the price, that mid-range resonance in the cabinet, once you hear it, you can never unhear it. And it does fuck up it, excuse me. Let me not. It did fuck up a lot of my mixes. You know what I'm saying? Even after I noticed that it was there and started trying to account for it. And so that's when I sprung for these. Um and to be honest with you, gas is so strong in this day and age, especially with us all over YouTube doing this, that it's hard not to always be looking at the next best thing than what you got. And so I chose the Atom A77H for a couple of very specific reasons, both in the interest of trying to future proof my studio. Number one, being able to tune them to the room, invaluable. Now, I had no idea that a few months after they started dropping speakers with the Sound ID reference, that they was going to start dropping interfaces with it integrated as well, thus giving you an option whether you want to do the integrated speakers or not. But I got them for that reason. And the second reason is because their predecessor, the A77X, is a speaker that's used all the way at the top end of recording studios all over the world. And so I knew, and this is the little bit of that gas I'm talking about, that you know what I'm saying, a weakness in most of us probably. I knew that I will always want, like, oh man, like everybody at this level got ATCs, or everybody at this level got PMCs. But you know what? Just as many people at that level that's rocking ATCs and PMCs and Genelecs and all that stuff that's more expensive than this, is just as many high-end studios with like a 9000E board in perfect service with a pair of A77Xs sitting on the meter bridge. Nothing else other than maybe a Grok box speaker or something, and rocking just fine. And so I knew I could get these speakers and it would curb that gas, that wanting to have what the top guys have. You know what I'm saying? And so in that regard, is a little bit of a cheat code for me to cop the A77Hs. Let me not gloss over the fact that they sound amazing, and that since I've acclimated my ears to those speakers in particular, I've stopped doing car tests altogether, which, if you know, that's fucking huge. Here's what's funny now. Back to a little bit more irony. I don't mix on them no more. I don't. I mix pretty much exclusively on the iLouds. I only use the Atoms now to check the low end right before I bounce down a mix, and then kind of check the depth of field, because you can kind of see front to back a little bit better with the image that they produce versus the iLouds. But I really only use those to check my mixes, and then I master on the Atoms. Everything else is done on the iLouds, because I can switch them to Dropbox, to Hi-Fi, and I got those they got their own room adaptation software, which I find is a little bit more straightforward anyway. You know what I'm saying? And so I do pretty much everything I do in here on the iLouds, testament to those, because those cost almost exactly the same as the IN5s that I was using, and they blow them so far out the water that them IN5s are bookshelf speakers to me now. They're not even in the studio anymore. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? Let's segue into what's still the heart of the studio. This is now what? The third studio tour update. And one thing is a constant, and I'm pretty sure it's going to remain a constant until they release a Mark II version of it, and that's the AudioFuse Studio. I still have everything running through the AudioFuse Studio, despite having purchased the AudioFuse 16 rig right when it came out. And for a while, I was using the 16 rig to like use that routing matrix to get all my gear routed in on the capture, right? But to be honest with you, that routing matrix is more headache than benefit. I don't know that I'll ever really want to get in there and fiddle with that anymore. It's just too confusing. It's too easy to have the wrong connection going to the wrong thing, and you end up with feedback, and like it's too hard to keep straight in your mind to be fucking with, you know what I'm saying, really at all. And so I quit fucking with it again. I know I had one video where I felt like I figured it out and had a nice chain going through it, but all the time it took me to figure that out, and then the first time I tried to change one little thing in that chain, just everything fell down, and I had felt like I was trying to relearn this fucking puzzle again. Like, routing matrices are dead to me now. I will never buy an RME interface looking for that either, because I understand that's equally complex. Not gonna fuck with antelope, none of that shit. If I want a patch bay, I'm going to fucking buy a patch bay. Middle finger to routing matrices. Fuck all that shit. I wish I hadn't bought the shit. As you can see, it's not even turned on. What I will use the 16 rig for at some point, and the reason I'm not selling it is a fucking whole pack of some of the best converters on the market. It's got two of the best preamps on the market, and it's got a lot of inputs. And so if I need to record more sources through different ways, I still got it ADATed to the AudioFuse Studio, and so I'll just literally just gonna use it as an ADAT expander, trying to dig into that, all the extra features and shit in there, in that control panel software. Honestly, I've got a really high IQ, like I'm 25% higher than average, right? And that shit is confusing to me every time I open it up. As soon as I think I figured out one chain and I leave it set, the first time I try to change one little thing, everything is just, it's Chinese all over again. Fuck that shit. As great as it sounds and as cool of an idea as it was, it's really a lot like touch screen climate controls in a car. Like, it looked cool as fuck and we was excited as fuck until we start trying to use it every day and realize it's just not practical. And so I gave rave reviews to the AudioFuse Studio before. Everything I said except the usefulness of the routing matrix still holds true, positive and negative. It still has pretty much zero monitoring capability, just by virtue of the fact that it doesn't have a good tracking volume knob, and a lot of it has to be done in software. It's just overall, it's not really any good for anything other than a bunch of extra inputs, just like they said. You know what I'm saying? If you got a bunch of synthesizers or a bunch of things that need a bunch of line level inputs, it's really great for that. But if you think you about to plug a mic into this and have all different kind of signal chains and be able to switch it on the fly and have, like, no. It don't work. It's not intuitive enough to make that feature worth it. You know what I'm saying? And that may be why, eating my words a little bit, some of my previous words, a little bit of egg on my face, that may be why things like the Flock Audio patch cost so much more. You know what I'm saying? For you to be able to actually use it like it's plugins. But to be honest with you, just no. Because now that they done came out with literal just time compensated IO boxes, I forget the name of the company that makes it, but that you can just plug in direct to your computer, separate from your capture interface. It doesn't need to be clocked or anything, and use that as a plug-in to insert your hardware. Like, routing matrices and digital patch bays, in my mind, are just, it was a cool idea, but I don't want to fuck with it every day. I just don't. It's a hassle, and it's not worth all that hassle. And so, moving along, from, you know what? Let's talk about my mic chain that I'm using, because there was one piece that I did add that is kind of the reason why I'm cool with just like leaving the studio off. I added this TL Audio C1 dual mic pre and compressor. And that has some bass in it. Excuse me. I run my mixes through this now. And so I don't actually use any of my hardware anymore in the mixing stage, except for the C1 and the Audio Magic transformer box. And then I track through everything else, which is crazy because I've been back and forth on this over the last year or two about whether I want to mix through these pieces, whether I want to track through these pieces, what sounds better. I did have a great experience mixing through the HA81A as well as the B172A when I first got the Audio Fuse 16 rig, just because of how much more signal I was able to drive into those pieces, to really kind of hear what those transformers do, right? But since then, I've learned a lot more about like what suits my workflow, and I've moved a lot away from what other engineers say works for them, typically on YouTube videos like this, because I realized that nowadays a lot of them dudes get a lot of free gear from a lot of companies, and I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck how many times you tell me your review is unbiased. If people was giving me multi-$1,000 pieces of gear left and right, I'll be releasing some fluff pieces too. You know what I'm saying? And anybody that ain't real enough to tell you that is either already getting paid or don't know what it's like to get paid like that. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, I digress. So now what I do is I track mostly, I done went back to the preamps on the Audio Fuse Studio, because to be quite honest with you, those are the best preamps I have in the studio. The 1073 clone is great. Obviously, the 1073 style preamp is the most sought after preamp on the market for the last however many decades for a reason. It sounds amazing, but it's a lot more of a one-trick pony than this preamp here, which is in the realm of Grace, Millennia, ISA versus 1073. And so what I have set up now is 2 mic chains. Both my NT1A, or excuse me, three mic chains, right? And we'll go in order. The one I'm using now is the C1000S going into mic input 2 on the Audio Fuse Studio, and I've got an insert on there that's sending it through the 2A and then the 286S. My NT1A is going to the HA81A preamp, and I don't have the EQ engaged. I haven't been using the EQ lately, just a preamp. And then that preamp is going to the other input to that same 2A. And so I got it set up to whichever preamp I turn the phantom power on, that's which mic is going to power up. And either way, it's going to go through the 2A and the 286, because the one of the great things about the B17 2A is it has 2 balanced inputs and 2 balanced outputs on each channel. You know what I'm saying? And that allows me to do that. And I don't use outboard for actual processing per se anymore, except for the 2 DBX units, which I only use for a little bit of light de-essing when needed, and a little bit of expansion to deal with like things like noise floor, and to kind of like lessen the impact of my breath. Like when I breathe in real fast for the next line when I'm rhyming, I don't want that breath to be brought up with the verse by the compressor. And so I use the expander for that on the way in. But the DBX is just like guardrails. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not actually getting any gain reduction. Well, maybe a dB or two here and there. From the 2A, I'm not using it for that. I'm literally just using it for tone. And then my third mic chain is coming from the booth with my delicate ass Diva mic that needs to be isolated. The Telefunken is going to channel 1, mic channel 1 on the Audio Fuse Studio, and that is coming out and going to the 17 side, the 1176 side of the 17 2A, and then going to the 286A, which is the same as the 286S. It's just I got the 286A modded by Revive Audio. Same with the TL Audio C1. Both of those are modded by Revive Audio, so they got better components in them than they would have had stock. And so the Diva mic is going to the 1176 because it doesn't need that bottom end bloom that the 2A gives stuff. And so that's just going to the 1176 and then going to the 286. And so the DBX units are the only processing that I do with hardware anymore. And like I said, it's just very, very light de-essing, light expansion, and just a tiny bit of that over easy compression, just because I'm not really getting any compression from the 2A or from the 76 when I use them. I got the 76 set to where it's 20-1. It's better. The needle only moves if I really just, you know what I'm saying? So I don't use hardware because when I run my mix through the C1, the needles don't move at all. I use it as a bus compressor because it is a VCA compressor. It's just got some nice tubes in the signal path, and it's got those nice mic preamps in front of them. And so I literally just run my mixes through there. I use it as a bus compressor, master bus compressor when I'm mixing. And then when I go to master, I run through here again with the Audio Magic transformer box as the last piece in my mastering chain. And I literally do everything now processing wise with plugin. Like if I actually want to tame a vocal, apply compression, I apply compression in the box. More transparent, non-destructive, you know what I'm saying, compression, EQ, de-essing, anything that any actual heavy processing that needs to be done to a signal, I just do that with plugins now, because I done recorded in through some tubes and transformers and stuff. My last stage in my mix chain is going to be some tubes and transformers and stuff, and my last stage in my mastering chain is going to be some tubes and some serious transformers and stuff. And with all the plugins that I use along the way, which is a lot less now for that reason. But most of the plugins now that I use along the way, I'm able to use the ones with the most deep surgical features that don't really apply any kind of tone because I already got my tone. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? And so it just really has made things way easier. I get songs done way faster now because I'm not digging through a bunch of plugin settings looking for tone, and I'm not twisting a bunch of knobs out here in the real world looking for control. You know what I'm saying? I'm just literally just using the things for what they excel at because I know you can get that tone with plugins. I know for a fact you can get it. However, I've not mastered how to do that yet. I've not really made that a huge priority because when it came to tone, saturation, that kind of thing, I've always been able to be like, all right, well, let me just run it through this cassette recorder or something, or let me just, you know what I'm saying? Or I'll run it out through the ASR 10, that type of stuff. And so I've always kind of relied on kind of coming out of the box to get my tone when I need it. And the times when I've tried to do things all the way 100% in the box, it has either taken me way, way, way longer than what I'm comfortable with to get the desired result, or that mix just isn't as good going back and listening in hindsight years later. You know what I'm saying? And so it's actually even a few things that I did back in like 2014, 15 that now that I've got kind of a more of a nail in my workflow, I might go back and remaster. You know what I'm saying? For that reason, because it's missing some of that vibe that I now kind of have dialed in here. And then I guess the only thing left now to really talk about is my production game, which is pretty much the same. I produce exclusively now in Studio One. I got the Studio One Pro annual subscription or whatever. Ooh, subscription. I got Waves one too. And what? I use the Alesis VI49, same one. Like I said, the pad's a little loose, the key's a little spongy, but it get the job done and it's reliable. And then on the hardware side, I still got my same ASR 10. The keyboard tunes a third of the time when you spark it up, but I don't really care. Because I really just use it as an effects processor for the Yamaha MM6, which is where I get a lot of my like ambient sounds and stuff like that from. I'm using a lot of VST instruments in the box, but occasionally I will want something that's going to have like a kind of a different situation to it. Like when you blend it all together, right? It's going to sit different. And so that's what I use this setup for, because the ASR 10 has the effects processor. It's basically a full-fledged synthesizer. You know what I'm saying? And then I got these little things, right? These little Korg I got the Korg vocal kick plugged up right now. But I also have this Voca new bass, right? And I've actually had both of them for probably almost like 2 years now. And I literally, I just plugged them in for the first time yesterday. I didn't even know if they was going to power up. I just bought them and just left them sitting there because I was so busy with everything else. I bought those right before I packed everything up and put it in storage for the move. And then when I finally got the studio set back up again, which has been now about a year ago in this new space, I spent most of my time up here trying to figure out that damn routing matrix, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? And so trying to incorporate 2 new hardware synthesizers into the mix, and I didn't just reincorporated my old joints, with new interfaces and I'm having problems all over the place and I got a microphone that got an attitude half the time, I wasn't trying to experiment with no new pieces for a while. But once I added the C1 and rerouted everything back through the Audio Fuse Studio to where it works the way I like it with knobs and buttons for shit, you know what I'm saying? I feel a whole lot freer to now start doing some experimentation. I done moved a couple microphones over here by my desk now. So I can just, you know what I'm saying? I can sample into this. I can sample into that. I could, you know what I'm saying? Kick a verse right here for y'all if I want to. Everything is just kind of freer. You know what I'm saying? When I'm not trying to do something that the only reason I want to do it is because it would be cool or because I saw a cool thing you could do on somebody else's studio video or something. Like, nah, the Audio Fuse Studio is probably the best interface on the market for monitoring, mic pre's, ease of use, one button, one function. Shit sounded gimmicky before I tried to buy something that don't got that and use it in tandem. Like, I'm cool.